Well, hello and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host and the founder of Alzheimer's Speaks, Lori La Bey. So welcome today. So let me go ahead and introduce our next guest here. Elben Mano is a Franco-American filmmaker based in Portland, and for more than 20 years he's worked as a film director, a photographer, and a film producer on many documentaries. Since 2010, Elben has been producing a film collection along with a scientific community of geriatric doctors called Remembrance. And this is a collaboration and collection that is dedicated to patients and caregivers affected by dementia. The first collection is now collection of films is now available online streaming. So, Elben, welcome to the show today. How are you doing?
Good morning, Lori. I'm very well. Thank you very much for hosting me and inviting me to participate today.
Well, I think your project is really quite exciting, and but before we go in to talk about that, I always just like to let our listeners know if you've been personally touched by dementia. Have you had a family member or a loved one, touched by this disease, and how did you get involved in this to begin with? So.
Well, you're absolutely right. The project that I will talk to you about today started about 5 years ago when my grandmother actually was personally affected by dementia. She's 93 years old. She was diagnosed as a stage 1 as an Alzheimer's patient, and I decided immediately that because she was always someone extremely full of life and happy through her entire life and very positive person, that I had to do something and bring my expertise and domain of experience to help her in what she was going to go through, and that's how the project originated. Actually, yes.
Okay, great. And can you tell us, why you created this and how you feel that this is kind of a new therapeutic solution in terms of providing care for Alzheimer's and dementia patients?
Yes, well, one of the first things that I realized, I wasn't familiar at all with the conditions of living that the patients affected by dementia were living into. And as I said, when my grandmother was affected by it and when she started to live in the institution, I would pay her frequent visits and could measure the chaotic and the stressful environment in which she was living in and in which she was surrounded by all the time. And even though there was a little garden in the backyard of the institution, I realized that no one was going, and that the only horizon that the patients were living in and looking at was the gray walls of the institutions or the white blouses of the people that were in. And to me, it seemed like something that we could easily change, coming from the world that I live in. As a photographer, I'm an observer of nature. I meditate, I travel a lot, and I see beautiful things throughout my travels. And I thought, well, it would be so simple to help and bring a little bit of what I see into the institution. So I started to work on a body of images that was different and more targeted for the people and the audience that I was dealing with. And very quickly, the doctors that were present in the institution said, well, I think we're touching something very important here, because you are absolutely right. We were able to stimulate some of the senses and create a sort of a quiet and non-stressful, non-threatening environment by projecting simple images. And for the listeners to understand, I mean, we always say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I invite everyone to go and see the little trailers. But for the listeners, I want them to understand what I did and the concept that I created. Through the meditation process, sometimes we look at nature and we breathe and we or even when we walk without even realizing it, we diminish our level of stress by just looking at something in the distance. Well, I took that literally and saying, when I take a walk in nature, when I look at the sky, or I'm very fortunate to be living in Portland, Maine, and to be living by the ocean. And very often when I take walks, I look at nature, and all that contributes to my to my not my healing process, but to my general state of being, and to my stress level. And I thought, well, this is something I could do. I could use the new technological tools that are now available, and then I'll explain you how I use them to bring that into the homes, into the institutions, and project them. And one thing that was very important was the technical aspect of it. I wanted the films that I was going to create to have an extremely high level of precision. I wanted them to be like living tableaus, like something that we would look at. And you know how television is the opposite of something that is stressful. It's very confusing, especially for people affected by dementia. It's not handicap accessible, and very often when I go into hospitals, I couldn't understand why the television was always on, and I thought it was something that was not adapted at all. And so the project that I started to work on, those living tableaus, I thought needed to have a quiet and peaceful aspect of it. So I filmed long sequence shots, and sometimes they would last, at the beginning of the project, would last several minutes, up to 10, 15 minutes, and then we realized that the attention span of not only the patients but of the caregivers was reduced, and then we would be losing the attention. So we reduced our living tableaus to 3 minutes. So what it is really, it's a moving image, a very simple moving image. There is no voiceover. There is no narration. Sometimes I use just simple silence. There is not even ambient sound. Sometimes I do use the ambient sound because we've seen through music therapy and sound therapy that the cognitive stimulation that can come with the use of sound is very important. But we've worked on those films so that they're very simple ways to access them. So the films last 3 minutes, and we have 10 of them that comes in a row. So we have 30-minute sessions that are provided throughout the day that comes and help the people and the caregivers that are surrounding to take a moment of breathing throughout the day, and that's how it all started. And then we worked on the films themselves with, like you said originally, a committee of geriatric doctors and psychologists. We started to work on the sequencing as we were advancing into creating the series of films, and realized that not only we could provide with the films something that would be meditative and calming and soothing, but that we could also use that as a cognitive stimulation in some ways for the patients. So we created a series of films, and some of the films we use in the morning, some of the films we use in the middle of the day, and we used, the circadian aspect of dementia and chronobiology to diffuse the films at different times, and very quickly we were able to measure a drastic diminution in in the level of stress and in the environment that we were dealing with. I'm sorry for my mix and my confusion in the way I present that, but I hope I'm making myself clear.
No. So basically, reminiscence is they're about how long are they? 3 or 4 minutes long a piece? Is that what I read for the film?
Yes, absolutely. Every film is
Okay.
3 minutes long, and the sequencing for every session is different. Like we would have, we realized that after 30 minutes, the attention span of the patients was going away because there would be scenes of nature, for example. We are here in Maine. I created a series of films specifically for people that grew up in farms. So we have like sessions of my films that are targeted with farm scenes. And so we have 10 farm scenes, 10 films of 3 minutes. And we worked out the sequencing of those films that at the beginning it would be very stimulating, and then we would go out with the films into something that is more soothing, and then the sunset would for example lay on the farm, and that would be the end of the film. So we would have a 30-minute sessions, 10 films of 3 minutes that would come and could be used as a conversational piece or just a very simple link, a new way of a new community. It creates a caregiver-patient connections and improves the relationship also of the caregiver, the patient, the aidant, because by looking at something that we all take for granted, we provide not only something that is relaxing, but we create a new link with this very simple image.
Which makes a lot of sense, and I think one of the things that that people forget, and Harry Urban, who is diagnosed with dementia, said this one time on our dementia chats, and I just found it to be so profound and so true, is he says, I used to like relaxing before I got dementia. I still do now. And I think
right.
they find these films very relaxing. They just are very settling and grounding and calming and yet peaceful. And it's a beautiful visual. And like you said, some have background music and nature noises, and others are just perfectly quiet. And that's how our everyday life is. So that is a normal, where we just like to sit and absorb what's before us, the beauty, and you're bringing that into them for them to be able to have that opportunity again, which I think is lovely, and I think it's a powerful way for people to be engaged, even if there's not chitting and chattering going on. We don't always have to talk to be engaged, and I think that's something that's kind of a myth out there, that people have to be physically active and they have to be talking to be engaged, and I think this will blow that out of the water. And do you have scientific evidence of engagement with people watching your films at all?
Yes, absolutely, and this is a very important point. Thank you for mentioning it. And I want to rebound on what you just said, because the Professor Ivagid, who's the scientific director at the Brain Institute in Paris, summarized our mission. His job is to develop new innovative techniques to cure neuropathologies. And I have a quote that I really like to use sometimes too, because I think it illustrates exactly what you just said. Here's what he says. He says, someone affected by dementia needs to have his or her spirit opened. We need to make them see, hear, and listen. The need to perceive things is good for them. The brain is a complex molecular biology system. What is good for us is even better for them. And that's exactly what you said. We don't need to be talking all the time. There are very simple ways in which, and very often I talk to people because I am going into institutions and I project my films. and because I like to be there. And I talk to people and that caregivers and patients at different stages that gives me immediate feedback and says, the only time I could speak with my mom or that I would find her again the way she was before when we would go by the water. And she said that she would feel exactly the same thing before. And that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do. So to go back to your question about the clinical validations and how it is effective, there are many ways in which the films have a spectacular impact on patients and caregivers. Alleviating the stressful living conditions in which they are living by creating a peaceful moment in time through meditation is an important aspect of it, and it can be measured very simply. What we did originally 3 years ago when we started to work on that was to have we tried that over 500 patients with the doctors and nurses, and we would say, okay, every nurse was in charge of 2 or 3 different dementia patients, and we would analyze their reaction throughout the diffusion of the films. And that's also how we were able to work on the sequencing, saying, okay, this one might be a little too meditative for the beginning of it. Maybe we need to use that film for an evening session. And another film would be stimulating the episode memory, relaying a precise life episode of an individual. So we would measure the agitated movements that would go down over time. And the results were spectacular because the doctors told us, I don't know how it comes from scientifically, but our hypothesis comes from the fact that by projecting these films for 3 or 4 long minutes, again, nothing's happening, yet there is always an element of drama. We're watching the sunset, but there's always a bird crossing. We're watching the chickens in the farms, but the chickens are eating a worm. There's something happening. The little cats are playing together. The very simple sceneries of natures are happening, yet they last a certain amount of time. Normally in television, an image wouldn't last more than 5 to 10 seconds, and then you move on to something else. In this particular film, the last 3 long minutes, and 3 minutes is a long time for your brain to have an imprint. So after a couple of weeks, we were able to, by questioning the patients, to say, do you remember, Mrs. Smith, the films that we watched last week? And they would say, yes, I remember we watched a beautiful sunset. And that was, for the doctors that we were working with, an incredible thing. So we started the clinical study. And realize, music therapy has been used for decades as a tool, but guided imagery is something that is fairly new. The scene selection, the order, the music, and the chronobiology, we were able to measure a direct impact on the reducing of the sundowning effect that I am sure most of your listeners are aware of. By projecting the films at the end of the day, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, by taking their mind off the anxiety that comes with that moment of stress, we were able to see in the reactions of the patients the diminishing of the stress. The chronobiology throughout the day, making films that would give them new temporal references. I will simplify it, but it's very simple to understand. At the end of the day, we would provide films of sunset, and at the morning, and in the morning we would provide longer films of sunrise, so that they could be used by the patients and the caregivers to create those new temporal references throughout the day. And that's what we've been measuring over the period of the time that we developed this series of films. And the clinical validation that comes with it was made from several panel testing. We're doing the same, and we're continuing that because we believe that there are many more ways in which we can use the sound and the music in the films to continue to bring this awareness in many ways. Did I answer your question fairly correctly? Yes.
Yeah, no. I think that makes a lot of sense there. What kinds of effects are care partners expected to see? In terms of people diagnosed watching these films. What types of reactions are they going to anticipate from a patient side?
On the patient side, there are several effects that we were able to mark down. One of the first one was the diminishing of the evening anxiety that I was just mentioning. The sundowning effects was drastically improved. We were able also to note that there were strong reduction in the behavioral troubles and the agitated movements of the people that were watching through the films. It improves the mood and lowers the stress level in which the patients are living in, and by creating multisensorial positive stimulation, we were able to work on the stress level of the patient, which not only created something for the patient himself that was encouraging for us, but for the caregivers and the medical staff, we were able to create an environment that was much easier to work and deal with. For the medical staff, we were able to create, like I said earlier, non-directive dynamic communication. We were able to use some of the films to stimulate the cognitive functions and use them sometimes as a form of re-education through art therapy. We were like one of the sessions, would be used as a conversational piece, and says, okay, now we've watched those films for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Let's talk about a little bit what we've seen, in the farm or on the water. What does that bring back to you? The creation of those new temporal points of references is also something very important. I decided to include that and use the films because as in the editing process, I realized that I was dealing with different times of the day, and I said, well, this seems very simple. And one of the important aspects of dementia is, as you know, the inversion of day and light and the loss of temporal references. And the doctor says, is there something or a way that we could work? I've followed initiatives that were done in Canada that I thought were excellent. At the end of the day, the caregivers would put their pajamas on, and this was a way to mark that time of the day. And I thought, well, there is a way with guided imagery that we can also provide that. So the films sometimes can be different. The films, when we use them in the morning, the sunset would last not 3 minutes, but would last 10 or 15 minutes and would be in the environment, in the living common spaces or in the bedrooms. And that would create an immediate time reference for the people that are watching that.
Okay. Now, I would imagine that these films, and I don't know if you did any studies on this, would have a big impact on the caregivers just to get them to relax as well. So if you're watching this at home, did you do any studies regarding the care partners in terms of them watching this? Because I think it's beneficial to anybody to just slow down, breathe, and take some beauty in. Just shut everything else out and just focus, on a scene and the appreciation for what you're seeing. Did you do any studies for family caregivers at all?
Well, we didn't particularly focus our study on the caregivers, but since we work with the caregivers, we were able to measure that the caregivers were benefiting just as much from the environment that we were creating. Actually, to me, the films are not targeted essentially towards the dementia patients. I think, like like Rita mentioned before, it is very important to stimulate the five senses. And what I will go back to what Professor Ajit said. What is good for us is good for dementia patients as well. And the stress level of dealing with dementia patients increases with the various stages of the disease. And it is very important for the patient that the caregiver in itself has a peaceful way of dealing with it. And by looking at the films, with or without, you're absolutely right, the patients, we are able to take away from the stress that comes with it and bring a sort of peacefulness. But at the same time, when you have your mom in the bedroom or in the living room just looking at a film in the middle of the day, then you're able to attend some of the things that you wouldn't be able to be doing throughout the day. And you're still able to carry on a conversation or to work or to do different things. And as I'm talking about my films or presenting them, I did a couple of Pechakucha presentations where people can come and talk about various projects. And people would come and says, I'm affected by. I was a veteran, and I am a veteran, and I went to war. And your films, I feel, could be very useful because I have troubles going to sleep at night, and the post-traumatic stress that comes with it. I think your films could help me. So we started to use the films and said, of course, you can use them because they're not only targeted for people that are affected by special forms of dementia. We built it. I created this collection, a series of films for the patients themselves, but they, of course, can be used by anyone that is into a stressful forms of daily life. The MIT in Boston has been studying for the past 10 years a lot this new trend in mind-body medicine and how your mind affects your general state of being and measures how the impact of stress can develop not only dementia but several forms of diseases. So by providing a form of inner peace, by meditation, and my films are in no way a form of a strict meditation in this literal form sense of the word, but they are a form of meditative approach to life. Because what happens, and it's very easy for any of your listeners to go online and to try that. I have one of the sessions because I like people to try that and give me some feedback about what it does to them. They can go online right now and look at one of the sessions with the little cats in the farm that I was mentioning before and see what it does to them. Because at the beginning you're looking at the cats and you're looking at the scene and you say, oh, this is very cute, and it brings a smile to your face. And after 30 seconds, 45 seconds, you're still looking at them, and then the dog comes in the bag, but something happens. You're not looking at a film. We're not telling you a story. Instantly, you are starting to be somewhere else. You are in a sort of meditative state. You're traveling. You're dreaming. And actually, this is how the geriatric doctors that we were using those films for would present the film throughout the day. There would be dreaming sessions. They would say, okay, and they would bring the patients in the institutions and say, for 30 minutes, we're going to provide you with images that will recall some of the places that you see in your life. But there is nothing to understand. There is no complicated plot. There is no voiceover. You don't have to feel threatened by anything. and I showed the films in many institutions. And I was always amused because the nurses would come to me before and says, we know how to deal with that. We are expecting some very agitated movement from such and such patients, and do not worry about it. We know that you're not necessarily accustomed to this type of effect. And I would say, okay, we'll see how it goes. And 95% of the time, nothing happened like they would expect it. The reduction of the agitated movements was not coming from the patients that were mostly agitated, and something would happen. The power of music, for example, is tremendous and has been used in music therapy, for decades. I used music also as a very important creative tool to stimulate the memory of the patients. I would identify with professional musicians and musical therapists songs from the 30s and 40s and 50s and even locally. We don't have the same songs in Maine or that we would have in Minneapolis at this period of time. So we would be identifying two different forms of songs, and at the same time, some songs are more universal. So we would be able also to use the power of music to create and stimulate the memory and the power of sounds. But I also worked with musicians to compose songs for the film specifically. So there would be a really strong connection between the images that you would be looking at and the films and the music that would come. And that to me was very, very interesting since the film were soothing and meditative and calming, it was very important to have the music that would go with it. And the creative process that brought to that was very interesting. Because I could see that by the combination of the various elements, by working with people that were using different tools, the music, the imagery, the chronobiology of time throughout the day, we were creating something that could be used as a tool to help not only the patient but the caregivers. You were absolutely right to underline that had helped their daily conditions of living.
Yeah, definitely. Now we have somebody in the chat box. Terry is saying, if you look at the history of cinema and TV, historically the camera lingered on a scene for 45 to 90 seconds. Much longer takes is far less stressful on the neurology aspects of the brain, and the faster and faster the cinematography, it's very hard on the brain and in changing it literally the way we're wired. So there's really some rhyme or reason for slowing down and letting us just absorb it. Goes on to say, it sounds like this film work is addressing and taping into the nonverbal areas of the brain, which should also help us relax. There is no language or information that requires processing, so being able to get it should be much more comfortable to the challenged brain. And that's something I hear over and over and over again. Thank you, Terry, for those comments. From people with dementia, they say, I don't watch TV anymore, or if I do, I'm just sitting there with my spouse or my loved one because they want to watch it, but I can't track it. I don't enjoy it. I just enjoy being with them. And for many, it's stressful trying to stay connected and keep up with plots and everything that's going on. And so this really is a nice kind of new normal that allows people to relax and I like that kind of dream state. It's because dream, hopefully it's a peaceful dream state, not a nightmare, but what you're creating is this peacefulness And I think that's one of the things, again, that I hear from people with dementia is there's so much angst in their life, and they're constantly nervous about what's going on, and just to allow them to be in a beautiful, comfortable setting adds so much value and allows a much more dignified state for them to be present in as well. So, kudos for developing this. I hope that this that people really understand what's behind this. This isn't, just putting in a tape to keep somebody busy so that you can do something else. Not that you can't utilize it for that and allow yourself some time to be able to do something else, but it really is bringing a peacefulness within, which is so important. And it might jog some memories and some conversation as well, in terms of when they have been in a moment similar to that. So I would imagine that happens probably a lot with people, that they see the dog or the cat or the horse or the cow or wherever it is, or if it's going down the canal in a boat, that it jogs memories, or the people dancing, it jogs memories in their own mind. And because we're always trying to figure out how we fit in usually to different scenes. Do you get a lot of reminiscing generated after watching these films?
Yes, and very often it conduces. One of the great joy of this project that it brought to me was the fact that as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker, throughout my life, I would always work on very exciting projects, but and sometimes would go, but I would never really have the chance to be confronted to the public that I was working for. You make films for television, and then they're sometimes broadcasted once, and I mean there's a screening once, and then they're broadcasted, but you're never in front of the end viewer. And with this project, I took a very different approach. I used the network of filmmakers that were in my environment, and musicians, to say, okay, we're going to do something that is very different from anything that we've done so far. And the way we're going to do that is really to adapt the films to a specific population. And in order to really measure the impact and create films that are really adapted to it, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the institutions. We're going to project the films ourselves and see what it does. And I didn't know what that was going to, how much this was going to affect me, because very quickly the feedback that I would get from the reminiscing of all those images, people would say, oh, I think I know, one of the films, one of the places that you've been showing us earlier on. I was there, and yes, I grew up in a farm that was very similar to the one that you showed us, and I think this little cat was actually my little cat, and I didn't know that the reminiscence that would come from just the simple viewing would have such an impact on people. So as we would move on with the production of the film, I decided to put an emphasis on that and says, okay, let's brainstorm and see and imagine what is part of our common day-to-day life. What are the simple things that we do or we look at throughout the day without even realizing it, and how could we make that interesting by just projecting ourselves in them for 3 minutes? So then we would film, and I'm still in the process of doing that. So then I film, I go out, and then we edit the films, and we add music or sound or just pure silence to it, and then we project it. And very often, nine times out of 10, the reaction from the patients, but also, like you said, from the caregivers, is very rewarding in many ways, because we are able to have an immediate feedback on the films that we're making, and that was very important to us because it helped us to create something that was really connected to the daily life of the people that we were working with and for. So after I do my projection, I always stay, and I like to talk on the film sometimes. I project the films for 30 minutes, and I say, well, here now we're in the coast of Maine, or now we're down in Louisiana, and this was shot, on the Missouri River, and very soon, in a few minutes, you will see a bird crossing the thing, and I give the name of the bird, and very simple little hints like that. And I realized that the interaction was just very, very nurturing in many ways. And the nurses and doctors we're working, or that I go when I go into a new institution, or where I provide the film to a caregiver, I always give sort of a methodology on how to use the films. We can and at what time, and like you said, the television is very confusing in many ways to me, and it's even confusing to everyone. Sometimes you look at the news and you have 4 different sources of information. Something is written that doesn't have any relation whatsoever with the image that you're viewing, and then you're getting different sound for it. It's totally chaotic. Those films are the opposite way of that, and the nonverbal aspect, and the fact that we're processing something that is very simple is crucial. So, depending on the sessions that we project throughout the day, the sundowning sessions are very important. So we have I explain how to deal with those sessions in a different way. I said, okay, we're going for the sessions at the end of the day. When we're in institutions, what we're going to do is to create a very calm, peaceful environment. We're going to lower the level of lights, and because there is also a sequencing in the 10 films that comes together, and we're bringing people in sort of a meditative state, and then we have to take them out of it by slowly, reactivating the return to the life of the environment that they're accustomed to. And to me, it's always been something extremely interesting to witness the reaction and the people looking at the film. Something that like I said, I've never done before in my life as a filmmaker, because sometimes I would look at, and the documentary style is a very different way of looking and creating a content than what I'm doing now. But the rewards of being a filmmaker is to be able to show things to people that they don't see normally, and that's what I do as a photographer as well. And that is why also I insisted that the films that I would make would have an extremely high quality in terms of the quality of images. So all the images that I shoot are made with 4K and 5K cameras. This is a little technical here, but it means that the depth of field, the little details in the image have to be very present. The color, the lighting, they're extremely precise, and they're like extremely detailed photography with things that are moving. So we give the impression of really traveling through time and space by providing a new form environment, which is something that you don't have normally with normal cinematography, unless you're in a movie theater, and this is why I'm very excited too, because the new technology now allows us to do that in a very efficient way, and as we are going, this is a very simple tool. I don't know if you've heard of that, Lori, but if you've heard of the Snoo-Weselen multisensory rooms that have been used to stimulate the senses in Europe and in hospitals in the past 10 years. Have you heard of that?
They're fascinating. Yeah, they're fascinating. But they're expensive too.
Exactly, they're very expensive. They cost for the listeners who are not familiar with the Snoo-Weselen room. It's an initiative that started about 15 years ago in Scandinavia, and what they created is a way to stimulate the senses of kids or people or other mental illnesses by creating in a small environment stimulation of the senses. So we would see, I'm going to simplify it. It'd be really simple to look at images online, but they would make bubbles and sounds and calms, and there will always be a therapist with them or in those rooms, and there would be sessions that would last anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. And there were clinical studies that were done over the past 20 years, 15 years on the impact of this form of mind-body medicine, that it physically work. Well, the films of the Remembrance film collections have exactly the same effect as those multisensory room, except that we've exploded the walls and the physical wall and the cost of acquiring that for a hospital or an institution. We're able to provide exactly the same form of relaxation and stimulation through those modern interactive tools. So that was a great success for us, and I hope we can continue to do that.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I did have someone else comment that's from hospice and just said, this is just such a difficult disease. And has this been tried in hospice at all? I would think that this would be, again, really calming for both family and people with dementia or in end stages, if they're still able to engage and watch what's going on.
Is your question, has this been tried in institution?
Yeah, in hospice. In a hospice situation, yeah. In terms of, I could see where that would bring a lot of calmness to not only the family, but hopefully the patient as well, depending on where they're, what stage they're in.
Yes, actually, it all started in hospices and caregiver homes, and not only hospice ourselves. But then sometimes we would invite also caregiver families to stay with us during the projection, and the caregivers would come after and say, "Is there any way we can get the films?" And at the time when I started to do that, I had DVDs, so I would hand out DVDs and says, "Yes, you can use them." And in hospices, the process was a little different that you would do into your own home. They were used in hospital. They are currently used in dementia institutions, in hospices and caregiver homes, and not as a therapeutic treatment, but as an incitation to dreaming sessions throughout the day that are provided. So the use of the films is different if you're at home or if they are used by a committee of doctors and nurses in the institution. And the hospices that I've visited, they all have a corner with a television or a retroprojection system, and most of the time they are providing images or the Discovery's channel is on, or images that are also amenable to watch, but at specific time during the day, they would provide the Remembrance film collection sessions. They are providing it. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So do you want to talk a little bit about your collaborators that you worked with to create these films? I know you had mentioned a geriatric team. I don't know if you want to do any name dropping here. And then tell us a little bit, too, about where people can find the film and how much it costs. And we're going to need to wrap up. I think we've got about 10 minutes left here. So, but I want to make sure that we get a plug for that.
Yes, thank you very much, Lori. I'm passionate, and for me, it's also. I apologize for the French accent that I have, and I hope I can make myself clear. You're right to mention the people that I work with, because this is a team effort that I've been working with. Many people are involved into the production and the logistics side of it. I work with filmmakers, musicians, sound engineers that help me produce the content. That's the technical part, and the scientific committee of geriatric doctors and psychologists that we've been working with help us to modify the content to fit either the time schedule, the attention of the patients, or saying, no, this is maybe a little too threatening, or this could be in another sequence. So, and the analyzing of the reaction, patients and caregiver allow us to measure the impact. There would be too many people for me to thank and to provide name with, but everyone can easily go online and on forgetdementia.net. This is the website that I've just recently finished about a week ago, so it's still in the process, but where you can see most of our work. To answer your specific questions, how much does it cost? We are a not-for-profit operation right now. We're still trying to raise funds to continue to produce our content. So we provide all the films for free. There is a public license trial of our films that is now available for healthcare institutions in the United States and Canada. Everything is easily viewable online through an online delivery service. Again, all the link can be found on forgetdementia.net. So whether you're a private or a home license owner or a home caretaker, you can access the content. The films are available on the links, and we're trying to continue by raising a campaign. What we did. You will find a link on the homepage of forgetdementia.net to our Indiegogo campaign, and I want to use the opportunity of your fantastic show to call for action and ask your listeners to help us continue to produce our content. We need new contribution to bring the films into institution, into the home of patients, and all that has a cost. But they can help in many different ways, just by sharing on social networks the links, and the availability of this content is also a tremendous help. By being a non-for-profit, if we're dreaming of a white knight, a generous contributor, a patron of the arts, someone that could help us quickly boost that project by providing for us a way to distribute the content in a much larger way, and hopefully it will come. I believe in providence, like we say in France, and that something comes out of it. But in the meantime, I invite all your listeners to share the link, to share the content, and to come and try it. And again, money is no object. If you there is a way, just send me an email, and I will provide for free the content of the sessions to you. We really want that to help as many people as we can. So go to forgetdementia.net, and hopefully you'll find all the information and I think you've also put a link on your website, so it's very easy for listeners to go to the content.
Yep, exactly. Well, I appreciate all you're doing. It's very, very important work, and it takes a village, and we're all out there working together. I'm just going to look at some more comments here. Terry had said, let's see, what I've learned in education background, we aren't teaching math, we're teaching kids, for example. Same with healthcare. The other one, let's see, is we can't improve, only manage. When there's so much holistic and complementary care, we can really make a difference. So I think it's really, we have to focus on the right things that we're teaching our kids, and teaching ourselves, and taking time for that self-care. Is so critically important, and these videos, these short films can be great for self-care, just letting us relax. It's okay to relax in this fast-paced world, and I don't think we do it enough. I know I kind of lost my way, just being zippity-doo-dah, trying to keep busy all the time, and I don't feel guilty anymore relaxing, and taking a break, and I actually used to, which is really sad. But I think I've learned now to embrace the peacefulness even more, and what that does for me mentally, emotionally, physically. I mean, you can just, when you're in that relaxed state and you're comfortable and you're calm, if you really pay attention, you will understand and feel the difference it makes in your body and in your mind, and how it will allow you to then jump back into this fast-paced world a little bit calmer, a little bit more detached, so that you can maneuver your way through without all that baggage of emotions and guilt and all the other stuff that we take with us. So I think this is a beautiful project that brings into communities the peacefulness of nature and the natural life that we live, to places maybe they can't venture out to all the time, or maybe they just don't have the time to be able to go, or the money to travel, to some of the beautiful settings that you have. So again, kudos for this work, and it's amazing, when you know someone who's been touched with dementia, how that can change the impact in your life and the roads you go down. So I thank your grandma for having touched you with her disease, which allowed you to venture down this road and help us all with that. So again, for people who want to look at these films, go to forgetdementia.net. That's forgetdementia.net. And you can always reach out to Albine there too, from the website, and you'll be able to get to the Indiegogo site as well, where they're trying to raise funds to push this project out even more. Any last minute comments at all, Albine, that you'd like to address with the audience?
Well, I would just like to thank you, Lori, for giving me the opportunity, of course, to be on your show, but for the tremendous work that you're doing, because I do believe exactly in what you're saying. It is very important to address, and that's what I have discovered in the past years by working at it. It is very important to reach a peaceful stage within yourself, because it's the best way to immediately help. And Rita was mentioning before me how important it is to understand, and that's part of our training, what dementia patients were living into, and analyze their needs. And I think that if you're in a peaceful state of mind yourself, if you are not in a stressful state of mind, and the films helps to in that direction, then you are directly helping the people that you care for. So and providing the information, you mentioned that also, the resources that Alzheimer's Speaks is providing to all of us is crucial. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing.
Well, great. Well, it's always a pleasure to hear what's going on. There's so many resources out here that we just need to connect people to, and that's the whole purpose behind Alzheimer's Speaks. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day, and Rita for coming and joining us too, and taking time out of her day to be able to share with people the neat resources that you've developed to help shift our dementia care culture. So you have a wonderful week, Albin, and we will definitely be in touch in the future, okay?
Thank you, Rita. À bientôt. Au revoir.